Hello, everyone. Welcome to Buddha Zen Wisdom. We are here to accompany you every day. After retirement, whether you have money or not, there are 3 foolish things you should avoid doing. There's a popular post online asking, what are the things you only realize after retirement? The discussion is lively. Some people give advice from the perspective of interpersonal relationships, suggesting that relationships without genuine affection don't need to be maintained, and mutual non-interference is the best state. Some are more practical, advising that you should let your children know your bank account passwords to avoid future troubles. Others say that children aren't always reliable, and that good health is the foundation of everything. Many people look forward to retirement, but when the day finally comes, they realize it's not as simple as they thought. Life after retirement requires wisdom and careful management. Here are 3 foolish things you should try to avoid, as many people make these mistakes after retiring, which not only affect their quality of life but also harm family relationships. 1. Don't cut ties with your siblings. Cherish family bonds, but maintain boundaries. It's understandable to maintain boundaries with siblings, as everyone has their own independent lives. However, as we enter the later stages of life, we often realize that siblings are not just connected by blood, but also share a part of our life experiences. After our parents pass away, seeing our siblings becomes a way to reminisce and find comfort. For families with multiple children, siblings serve as a record of the past. We may forget many things, but our memories of ourselves are past, and our origins are most likely preserved in our siblings. Even if there have been conflicts or disagreements over small interests or misunderstandings, we shouldn't easily sever ties with our siblings. I once read a story that left a deep impression on me. The author's aunt was seriously ill, and the doctor had already advised the family to prepare for her passing. The entire family was grieving. The aunt had been a kind and virtuous person, always good to her family, but she had a strained relationship with her brother, and they rarely visited each other, even during holidays. In her final days, her children and husband stayed by her side day and night, taking care of her. Seeing that the children were exhausted, the author's mother and other aunts suggested they take turns caring for the aunt so the children could rest. Later, the uncle also came and, along with his sisters, took care of the aunt, feeding her water and soup, accompanying her in her final moments, and helping with her funeral arrangements. The author's mother said, even though they didn't get along when it really mattered, it was the bond of family that held strong. Others just came and went. Life is long, and we meet many people and experience many things along the way. When we're young, we're full of passion and courage, valuing freedom and independence. But as we reach the midpoint of life, we realize that the family ties we once took for granted are the most precious bonds. Some say that if your parents can accompany you until you're 40, you're lucky. For us, if our parents are gone but we maintain good relationships with our siblings, it can still bring comfort. Through our siblings, we better understand ourselves and learn to cherish this special relationship. Not cutting ties with them ensures that we won't regret it in the future. 2. Don't hurt your children's feelings by comparing them to others. In the 16th chapter of the Analects of Confucius, it is said, worry not about scarcity, but about inequality. Worry not about poverty, but about instability. This statement, which addresses the distribution of wealth, also applies to family relationships. After retirement, work is no longer the focus of life, and with more free time, our attention naturally turns to the people and events around us. Whose child just had a baby? Whose children took their parents on an overseas trip? Whose daughter just got a promotion? These topics of casual conversation can easily become the starting point for comparisons. Once we start comparing, it's easy to feel unbalanced. A close friend once confided in me, my neighbor's child just bought a new house, but my child is still renting. My friend's grandchild is attending a prestigious private school, while mine is in a regular public school. Every time I compare, I feel terrible. Indeed, who can remain indifferent to their children's circumstances? And who doesn't hope for a better life? But the world is inherently unequal, and there's no end to the things we might desire. In the end, comparisons only lead to insatiable desires and endless emptiness. Moreover, every individual and every family has their own pace and unique challenges. Constantly comparing ourselves to the highlights others display is like pitting our weaknesses against their strengths. Not only does it humiliate us, but it also discourages our children. In the novel Ordinary World, the character Sun Shaoan, despite coming from a poor background, managed to change his family's fate through hard work. The reason for his success wasn't just his own abilities, but also the love and support of his family. Whether it was his father, Sun Yuho, his wife, Hao Shulian, or his siblings, the mutual support and affection they showed each other generated immense positive energy. Imagine if this family had been filled with complaints, with Sun Yuho constantly comparing their situation to others. Would they have been able to rise above their circumstances? A harmonious family brings prosperity. And this isn't just an empty saying. True happiness doesn't come from comparing external conditions, but from genuine companionship and care. Once you understand this, you'll cherish the seemingly ordinary but filial child by your side. Like you, they're just ordinary people trying to live their lives. Life is like a cotton-padded jacket. It's warm and thick on the inside, and it doesn't need a fancy exterior to be valuable. This applies not only to our children, but also to life itself. 3. Don't get too close to relatives. Maintain boundaries in relationships. In Dream of the Red Chamber, the story of Lin Daiyu and Jia Baoyu serves as the main plotline, depicting the decline of the four major families, Jia, Shi, Wang, and Shui. The portrayal of human relationships in the novel is masterful. When the Jia family was prosperous, relatives flocked to them, but once they fell from grace, those same relatives disappeared, and troubles came knocking. This reflects not only the fickleness of human nature, but also the dangers of getting too close to others. In contrast, Granny Lu, who came to the Jia family to seek help, was a truly kind and loyal person. In real life, interpersonal relationships may not be as complex as those in the Jia family, but they still require careful navigation and maintaining distance. Even among close relatives, when interests are at stake, relationships often become insignificant. As the saying goes, relatives are best when they live far away, and neighbors are best when they build high walls. The subtlety of human relationships lies in finding the right balance. Boundaries are essential. They protect your own rights while preventing others from taking advantage of you. Take, for example, Mr. Lee, a retired neighbor who, having too much free time and being a sociable person, often hosted gatherings at his home, inviting friends and relatives. At first, the atmosphere was harmonious, but over time, problems began to arise. Some guests got drunk and caused trouble. Others borrowed money and didn't repay it, and some even used his name to deceive his family members. Although these were small issues individually, they added up and became a source of frustration. Mr. Lee initially enjoyed hosting these gatherings, thinking they strengthened relationships, but he didn't expect them to complicate things further. As society evolves, we've gradually moved away from the tightly knit family structures of the past and started focusing more on individual lives. If we still try to maintain overly close relationships with relatives, we risk losing our sense of boundaries. Perhaps we're still influenced by the mindset that maintaining relationships might be useful someday. But in reality, only those with whom we have genuine affection and frequent interactions will lend a hand in times of need. And this has little to do with blood relations and everything to do with the depth of the relationship. After retirement, it's even more important to simplify our social circles. Relatives we don't interact with often can be left alone. Keep a distance from relatives with questionable morals, but maintain contact with those who are kind and trustworthy. Wise people know how to set boundaries in their relationships with relatives. This is not only responsible for themselves, but also for their children and families. I once read a thought-provoking quote. When boarding a ship, don't think about those on the shore. When disembarking, don't mention what happened on the ship. Old acquaintances don't need to know your current situation, and new friends don't need to ask about your past. Everyone in this world has their own journey and their own destination. Learning to let go of attachments is the key to finding peace. After retirement, mindset is crucial. May we no longer be burdened by fame and fortune, no longer troubled by trivial matters, and free from the hearts of comparison, judgment, and coldness. Let's focus on feeling the beauty of life and discovering the small joys around us. By adjusting our mindset and cherishing the present, we can truly live a fulfilling retirement. May every retired friend enjoy a happy and healthy later life. A personal story: my daughter opposed our travel plans. My name is Robert, and I worked at a company my entire life. I retired last December. My wife, Margaret, is a retired teacher who has been retired for 5 years. Our only daughter, Emily, has been the center of our lives. When Emily got married, we spent all our savings, $70,000, to buy her a house near us. After our grandson was born, we took care of him full-time. Now that he's in kindergarten, I've finally retired. Margaret and I discuss how we've worked hard all our lives and deserve to enjoy ourselves. We've hardly traveled. I've only been to other provinces for work, and Margaret's farthest trip was to the provincial capital for training. Now that we have time and savings, we decided to take a trip abroad during the Spring Festival. I started researching travel guides online and even bought new clothes and shoes for the trip. However, when Emily found out about our plans, she was visibly upset. She bombarded us with questions. How can you be so reckless? How much will this trip cost? You're not young anymore. What if something happens? You don't even speak English. What if there's an emergency? My husband and I have to work. Who will take care of our son? I explained, Emily, your mother and I have never traveled in our lives. Now that we have time and some savings, we want to see the world. We've had regular health checkups and we're in good shape. We're planning to go during the Spring Festival when you and your husband are on vacation. You can take our grandson to your in-laws for a few days, or your mother-in-law can help out. We've also arranged to travel with some retired colleagues for support. The total cost for both of us is only about $5,000. I've looked into senior travel groups with professional care, so there's no need to worry. But Emily insisted that we were being selfish and not considering her life pressures. Her words left me feeling disheartened. We've sacrificed so much for this family, and now that we're retired and want to enjoy life, our own daughter is opposing us. A week later, Emily brought our grandson over for a visit. As soon as he saw me, he ran over, calling out, "Grandpa," and hugged me. Seeing his innocent face, my frustration melted away. During dinner, Emily mentioned, "Dad, Mom, our son is over 3 years old now. We want to enroll him in 2 extracurricular classes, but the fees are quite high. Also, his kindergarten tuition is due soon. My husband and I have only been earning basic salaries these past few months. Could you help us out?" We asked how much she needed, and she said around $2,000 to $3,000. Margaret and I were stunned. A few years ago, when Emily got married, her husband's family was from a rural area and couldn't afford much. Out of love for Emily, we spent all our savings to buy her a house. Over the years, we've managed to save a little, and now that we wanted to spend it on a trip, Emily was asking for it instead. I told Emily we do have some savings, but it's just enough for this trip. You and your husband earn over $10,000 a month combined. Can't you afford your son's tuition? Emily became upset, accusing us of being selfish and only caring about our own enjoyment. I lost my temper and told her she was being ungrateful. Emily's face darkened, and she left with our grandson. 3 days later was Margaret's birthday. I prepared a feast, expecting Emily's family to join us. But by 1 p.m., they still hadn't arrived. When I called, there was no answer. Just as I was about to call Emily's husband, he called to say they were attending an event at our grandson's kindergarten and couldn't make it. Margaret and I ended up eating alone, feeling disheartened. Seeing the shrimp, our grandson's favorite, Margaret suggested we pack some food and take it to Emily's house so they could eat it later. We hurriedly ate a few bites, carefully packed the food, and rode our electric scooter to Emily's house. But as we passed a restaurant near her home, we saw Emily's family dining inside. We walked in, and our grandson ran to us excitedly. But Emily and her husband looked embarrassed. Before her husband could speak, Emily stopped him and said, "Mom, Dad, I still think you shouldn't go on that trip. I really need you here." I was furious. "Emily, how can you be so selfish? It's your mother's birthday, and you didn't even come to celebrate. We've worked so hard to raise you and help take care of your son for years. Is this how you repay us?" Emily retorted, "We're under a lot of pressure too. Can't you think about us? If you insist on going on that trip, don't expect us to take care of you in your old age." Margaret burst into tears, saying, "Emily, how can you say such things? We've worked hard all our lives and never traveled. You're breaking our hearts." Seeing Margaret cry, I felt as if a knife had pierced my heart. I never expected Emily to skip her mother's birthday and say such hurtful things over a trip. I suppressed my anger and told Emily, "We've sacrificed so much for you and this family. Now it's time for us to live for ourselves. As for our old age, we've never planned to rely entirely on you. We have our pensions and can take care of ourselves. We're going on this trip, whether you agree or not." With that, I took Margaret's hand and left the restaurant. At that moment, I became even more determined. As parents, we've worked hard for our children for most of our lives. But even if we give everything, an ungrateful child will never be satisfied. In our later years, we need to live for ourselves. That spring festival, Margaret and I went on our trip and had a wonderful time. We've decided to spend our money on ourselves and enjoy the rest of our lives. After all, we only live once.